Well, joining us this morning is Gary Glunt, who has been providing some great advice on just financial intelligence and savings and all sorts of things. Gary, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you again, Luke. Yeah,
I'll tell you, there's so much out there in the world, and it was just crazy to hear like what happened yesterday with the tariff talk and like $2 trillion flooding Wall Street almost, and it's amazing.
It is, the the stock market, right? Okay, this has nothing to do with really what we're talking about today, other than just talking that. But in the short term, the stock market does wild, crazy things, right? And a lot of it is based on information that goes out, right? What's happening in that day, that type of thing, and for us lay people, right, to try and mess with that, right, to try and, we call it time the market, right? It's impossible, right? Good luck, and that kind of thing. So you see these swings up and down and that kind of thing. Now, the thing though is if policies are put in place that the stock market doesn't like, right, and they continue to stay in place, then you have long downturn trends, right, and that can lead to needless to say, us having problems with our retirement, right, and our 401ks and 403bs and that type of thing. But the fluctuations in the stock market happen all the time.
Do you think the national talk, though, can help spark interest in doing the things that you have control over and your financial planning and looking at what accounts you might want to move money into?
So I guess the answer to that is not on a short-term basis, right? You don't want to make a decision based on something that just happened one day, I
guess what I'm saying, like if you watch golf on TV and you go, well, okay, it's time for me to get out and play golf. Do you look at the markets and go, boy, yeah, you know what? I got to make sure I'm investing in.
Oh, so no, okay. I don't. Okay, but only because I'm not that guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not. So I have friends that will sit there and do that and say, hey, I should be doing this right now. I should be doing that right now. Every financial vehicle that we have has a purpose that people use it for, right? And so you have to decide, you have to know what the purposes are, or should know what the purposes are, and then decide how you want to use that, right? So when I look at the stock market, I'm a long-term player, right? So, the stock market to me is a place for me to earn wealth over time. And so that's how I use it. Now, I know there's other people that use it much differently than that, and that kind of thing. So, you have to, so me, no, I like whatever it does today, I don't care about. Whatever it does next week, I don't care. Now, when I got close to retirement and I had to make a decision what I was going to do, okay, now you worry about it, right? Now you have to look and say, hey, are things happening that I need to be aware of, and do I need to make a change, right?
It's like farming or advertising. You're planting seeds for, success down the road. Absolutely. If you're using it that way, that's how I use it, right? I use it to plant the seed so that now that I'm retired, now I have what I need, right? Yeah, you're not planting potatoes today because you want to have a potato tonight. Exactly. That's a great analogy. So that kind of leads into, summer's around the corner, and you've got kids that are going to be starting a job or graduating, starting a job, or just, summer job till school starts up again. Here's an opportunity to start gathering those seeds, right? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, there are going to be a lot of things going on, right? So graduation parties are going to be happening, right? Kids are starting, may have already started
their part-time jobs, may going to be starting those part-time jobs, and in the world, right? There's certain things that you need to look down the road for, right? Okay, and if you wait too long, things get harder, right? So it's so funny. I'll talk if I get a chance, like if I was teaching 14, 15-year-olds, right? I'll talk to them about retirement. And they're like, Mr. Glunt, I haven't even started working yet. What should I worry about retirement for? But if you learn how money works, not only should you be thinking about retirement and doing something about retirement because of the advantages of the three things we talked about, right? Time, amount, and rate, right? They have time on their side. So let's use it, And so now you got these kids, right? Some of them are starting jobs and graduation parties, right? They're going to get money for that. Now they have to decide, hey, what am I going to do with this? And one thing that I try to say every time I make a financial decision is this: is it going to cost me money or is it going to make me money? Okay, and so one of the when I'm talking to, and this goes for anybody at any age, right? But especially when I'm talking with kids, I'll pull out their cell phone. I'll say, all right, this cell phone, is that thing costing you money or making you money? Right, and I tell them, if all you're doing is kissy wissy huggy wuggy on it, and that texting and stuff like that, and how you doing, how am I doing, that thing's doing nothing but costing you money. It's not making you a dime. Now, can you turn that into an asset that's making you money? Absolutely. All right, and so now we get this graduation money, right? Okay, so graduation parties are going to start happening, and now we can go spend it and buy things that cost us money, right? Or we can use it to our advantage and have us make us money, right? And so, and again, this is a learning process. If you're sitting there right now going, well, geez, I don't know what things to do, well, then don't spend it, right? And put it like we talked about. That's what that savings account's for, right? Let's stick it over there till we know what we want to do with it, right? For something that's going to make us money. So if I was thinking about this on the way here today, right? And thinking about how money works through investing, right? And it's not the only way to make money, right? But it's one of the ways. And I thought to myself, you know what? If I was young again and somebody had talked to me about this when I was younger, I would have taken the first 5 years of my life and I wouldn't have spent a dime. I would have kept every dime I could, and I would have slammed that money away for 5 years. And I can't even imagine how. Well, I can't imagine how you
figured
would
this
be,
out, did you?
Yeah, you would be when you hit 50, 55, you would be sitting so pretty it would be ridiculous, and so So now it says, all right, we got this, we got our first paycheck, right? Okay, let's start with the paycheck. All right, want to talk about first of all young workers. Okay, and this applies to more workers, but it's specifically for young workers. Okay, and that is this: when you go to get a job, you fill out a W-4 form. Okay, and there's some rules on that W-4. And a W-4, for those of us who aren't sure what the W-4 form is, that's the form that tells your employer what they're supposed to take out of your paycheck for federal taxes, okay? And one of the things that happens is a lot of kids go in, right? They got their part-time job, all right? And the key number here for this year is $15,000, right? So, and $15,000 is the standard deduction for 2025 on your federal taxes, which means if these youngsters aren't making over $15,000 in a year, they're giving money to the federal government for free. And they're going to get it all back when they file their taxes at the end of the year, okay? And so, what they need to know is if they know they're not going to make over $15,000, you can write exempt on a W-4 form. And now you get to use your money for the year, okay? Well, now here comes the decision, right? So now I get my money, right? I do my exempt thing on the W-4, okay? And now they put that money in my paycheck. So I can spend it, or I can do what the federal government does with your money, right? And that's invest it, right? So now, instead of the government being able to invest that money, we can now invest that money into something, right? And so that's the decision that now they can make, because they've given themselves that opportunity to be able to do that. All right. So then, well, what do you do with it? Well, you look for the first thing you do is you don't do something rash, right? And that, again, if you don't know what to do with it, don't go just spend it on stuff, right? Another thing that I say to youngsters, and it's true, okay? Every time they spend $1 on something that is just something, right? Like a bottle of water or a pack of gum or whatever, okay? You just threw $1 million away. Yeah, and they look at me like, what are you talking about? You just threw $1 million away, So the math works out, and it goes something like this. If you put $1 a day away into, we talked about mutual funds, right? Something earning 10%, okay? And people say, oh, you can't get 10%. Yes, you can get 10%. You just got to look for it, right? Okay. I think we showed the one Vanguard index that has averaged 11%, right, over the last since 1967, I think it was, and I think that's what the date was, or maybe it was 77. And so if you take $1 a day away, put it away for 60 years, and a 10% investment, that you got $1 million. So every time you spend that $1 on something that is just stuff, you have thrown away $1 million, right? And so then kids say, well, geez, I don't want to wait 60 years. Well, neither do I. If you're let's say 18 years old and you wait 60 years, you're 78 years old to have $1 million, right? Well, now you throw more money at it. So instead of $1 a day, let's put $2 a day away, right? Let's put $3 a day. And I asked the youngsters, I say, how many of you could do $2 a day? How many of you'd blow $2 a day on something else, right? Now that time period just got shorter, right? And so
by a lot,
right? And you did $3 a day, and now it just got even shorter, right? Yeah. And so, and so we need to learn what we can do with our money, right? And that's just one thing you can do, right? The key is don't throw it away, right? Yeah. And so let's take graduation, right? So now graduation's coming up, okay? And I don't know, I'm sure every kid doesn't get a bunch of money, but you get something, right? Yeah. And again, like, it doesn't have to be a ton of money, right? $1 a day is not a ton of money. $2 a day is not a ton of money, right? So now you have that graduation party, right? And now let's say you get the chunk, you get that 500, you get that 1,000, right? Whatever. Now you are, my gosh, there's your $1 a day, right? So $1 a day is what, $365, right? So you've just done $2 a day, a little less than $3 a day at graduation, right? So now let's do our graduation money plus let's throw $1 a day away in. Now we're doing things, right? Now as they say, make your money work for you. Don't work for your money, right? Okay, and but there's a ton of things that they can do. That's just an easy one, right? Okay. Now there's a lot more to it. That's the basic gist of it. And when I say a lot more to it, there's bits and pieces that you learn about, right? It's just about learning. Okay. So looking here and at, let's see, I think on our, do we have the chart? Did the chart come through?
Should be on the back, I think, of your page there.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So when it comes to financial decisions, right, what you want to do is you want to look at your options and say, what should I do? Like, what's the best option that I have, or what's a option that I have, right, that helps me? It doesn't have to be the best option, okay? So example. So let's say that kid gets that money for graduation. All right, let's say it's $500 or $1,000. Okay, and I'm sitting here and I'm a kid. What are some kids going to say I'm going to do with this money? What's one thing that they might say that they want to do with this money?
At this stage, put it towards a car.
Right? Maybe put it towards a car. What else? We're thinking. Some of us are thinking college and going on to college. Buying what?
Books,
and, right? So you look at these options and you say, okay, so you list your options down. All right, well, I can take that $1,000 and I can put it towards my tuition. I can take that $1,000 and I can go buy a car with it. I can take that $1,000 and I can go blow it on stuff, right? I can take that $1,000, I go buy books, right? And I can take that $1,000 and I can buy a new speaker system, right?
It's like 2 books, by the way.
It's exactly. And by the way, on those lines, and that I don't know how it is anymore because I don't have any kids. Number one, but they have a lot of the used book places. Use them, right? And that one of the nice things about the used book thing is if the person who had them before you actually was a good student, they're already highlighted, right? So so now you have to check it out, right? So you go to your first class and you look and see what the student before you highlighted, and you see how that matches up with the first test. And if it matches up, you're like, yeah, and if it doesn't match up, you're like, well, I guess I got to do my own reading. That's
if you get the right edition.
Exactly. Right?
Hey, real quick, you're watching The Morning Drill on Stream TV and on the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel. Gary Glunt with us here this morning.
So, all right, so here we go. So now I'm looking at, all right, how am I going to pay for college? All right, and I'm just going to use this as an example, right? And I look at what the rates, like some of the rates are, right? So this is just grabbed it off the internet, did a quick search for, federal student loan rates, that kind of thing, and I look at the numbers here for the different types of loans. Okay, so I say to myself, I got $1,000. I could pay $1,000 of my tuition for that. Okay, or I can get a loan for that $1,000, right? And part of that, the $1,000. So let's say tuition, what is it, $15,000 a year, whatever, $10,000 a year, something like that. Okay, so I can either take a loan out for $10,000 or I can take a loan out for $9,000, right? If I put my $1,000 to give my $1,000 to the school, right? Or I can take my $1,000, take my loan out for the full tuition amount, $10,000, let's call it, okay, and take that $1,000 and put it into my mutual fund, right? Okay. Well, now my mutual fund's averaging 11 or 10, whatever, 8, whatever. Okay, and I can go get a loan for 5.5. Well, if that's the case, I'm making money, right? I'm not making a ton, but I'm making money. Where if I pay the loan, and I pay the loan, I'm not making money, right? Now I paid that down. I don't have as much to pay back over time, okay? But you look at, you compare the two things that you're looking at, right? Okay? And you say, and you list all the, all the advantages and disadvantages, right? So then let's say I take my $1,000 and put it on my tuition, or I take my $1,000 and I go buy a speaker for my car. Now I look at that and I go, all right, my pros and cons is, well, I just got a speaker and my money's gone, right? Or I put $1,000 on my tuition and I'm going to get a return on that, hopefully, when I graduate. And so you have to look at every financial thing in its own light and compare them and then say, all right, what one is the best one I should do, right? And then that's the one you select. One thing about debt, okay, and debt can be used to your benefit, all right, if you know how to use debt, all right? And in today's day and age, you have to know how to use debt, right? So, I'm not a big fan of going. I don't want people to think we're saying let's go into debt, okay? But if you can use debt to your advantage, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Okay, so just something simple. you know, and there's a bunch, but here's something that young kids might understand, right? Okay, you need a good credit score, right? If you don't have a good credit score, you are going to pay more for everything you buy the rest of your life, and significantly more than somebody who has a good credit score, right? So, if your credit score is horrible and you go buy a car, you're going to get a much higher interest rate than if I go buy a car and my credit score is awesome. If I go buy my house and my credit score is awful, I'm going to pay much more in interest than a person who doesn't have a bad credit score. And so keeping that credit score good is a huge financial thing, right? And one of the techniques of doing that is you have to build credit, right? So you're going to have to use some debt instruments, right? So if I'm a young kid and I want to start building my credit, I get a credit card, I put a $500 limit on it, and when I have the money to go get something, I take that credit card, I go buy those jeans, I come home and I pay that credit card off. And now I'm starting to build my credit. I'm getting points for using my credit properly, and it's not costing me anything to do it, right? Because if I pay that off within a month, then I don't get any interest charged to me. So that's just one example of using debt to our advantage, right? Okay. I do it with apartments, right? And so real estate and using debt to your advantage is wonderful, right? And I know this is kind of off the topic of kids and money, but it really isn't, right? You look for, how can I use debt to my advantage, right? Okay. In the apartment world, you never use your own money, right? And the reason you don't use your own money is because your tenants pay your debt, right? And so you let your tenants pay that debt, and you can take a loan out and you're not paying a dime, right? Your tenants are paying that dime. Now, if you don't have tenants, now you're paying a dime, right? Okay, but debt is an advantage, right? But if you're not good with debt, it can be a crusher, right?
And it can pile up quickly.
It can pile up quickly, right?
Gary, we having you back Monday?
Yes.
Let's pick up there, because there's more to go there, and I want to ask you something about that debt.
All right.
With somebody else that's nationally known who is very much against that.
Right.
Because I think you're right. You have to build that history. Mm-hmm. So we'll pick up there. Great conversation, Gary. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too, Luke. Have a good day, everybody.